We're going to talk through the description of the program and our goals and talk about some administrative stuff. And then Leslie's going to talk a little bit about her experience being a fellow, but it's a small group, so feel free to jump in with questions. And we can also take them at the end if you want to wait and see if we're going to cover something. So we started this program in 2022 in collaboration with Tax Analysts, which you probably are all familiar with. They're a major news publication in the tax space, and they fund the entirety of this fellowship, which is wonderful and incredibly generous of them. And as we were developing the fellowship in the first place, along with them, they were interested in doing something similar to a program that another fellowship that we've been running for much longer called the Christine Brunswick Public Service Fellowship. And that fellowship targets those who are new to the tax profession, so folks coming out of law school or a clerkship, and employs them for 2 years at a public service tax organization. And the goal is to encourage folks to consider a long-term career in public service, or at the least, if they move on to other things, to have a lot of experience in working with unrepresented or low-income taxpayers so that they can have a robust pro bono practice, and maybe come back to it later. So the goal for tax analysts was to sort of mirror that fellowship, but try to provide more stability for areas of the country and or existing organizations that might need someone to staff their operations who could sort of hit the ground running. So rather than have someone who needed to have a strong supervisor like our Brunswick program, these folks are coming right out of law school. They don't have experience practicing law. They really need a strong supervisor. So you really have to have an established LITC with a experienced tax lawyer. The goal for this program is a little bit different. So the goal here is for organizations that maybe lost their staffing, or would like to start up in an area where there isn't a lot of LATC coverage. So they're going to pursue the grant, or they recently achieved the grant but don't have staffing, to try to expand the coverage and reach into geographic areas that can be hard to cover. So Leslie's counterpoint, who is our fellow for the 2005 to 2007 time period, is RG Ernest, sorry, and he is in Arkansas, in rural Arkansas. So that's a spot that has historically been challenging to find staffing, but he's from there and is a tax lawyer and has experience. And so I think that's a really good example of what this fellowship is trying to do, as is Leslie's role, which she will talk about later. So I won't steal your thunder, Leslie. So that's sort of the idea behind this program, and it can mean filling all sorts of types of gaps. Someone before the recording started, I recognized an LATC that where once the staff person that had been there for a while left, the LATC had to close. That would be a good example of the type of gap that we'd be trying to fill here. So that's sort of the idea behind this scholarship, is to put financial resources into sort of the matching element of the LATC grant program. Now, that's not to say that there isn't space for someone doing something that's not direct representation work. We've certainly funded projects on the Brunswick side where people are working in nonprofits doing more exempt organizations related type work, or policy related work. And that is a possibility too. I think we would still be going to that core mission of what gap is this person trying to fill in the tax landscape, and how would it benefit low-income taxpayers, or society at large. I would say the public service at large. What is the public service mission here? And so similar to our other fellowship, the fellows need to locate a host organization before they apply for the fellowship. So there needs to be a 501c3 or a government agency or some sort of nonprofit. Now, usually this is a LATC, but it could be any other sort of type of nonprofit or government organization that would host the fellow. And Ty's going to talk a little bit later about how the administration of the grant works, but essentially the money doesn't go directly to the fellow. The money goes through the host organization, and you are treated as an employee of the host organization. Now, you can be the only employee at the LATC, but there needs to be a structure, some sort of structure, some sort of organizational structure that we're paying into. And so the requirements in terms of the host organization are that they are willing to take this person to take, the potential fellow on as an employee. They're willing to receive money from the ABA that would then pay for that person's salary and benefits. And they're willing to treat them as they would their other staff. So, that usually involves some sort of office space or potentially some other resources. Now, mostly this person shouldn't be high cost to the organization, given that we're covering the salary and benefits, but there are going to be some fringe things that the host organization will likely be paying for, a computer, an office space, some other things like that. So it's not completely without a commitment on the host organization side, but if you're bringing in grant money, this counts, the money that we pay counts as a match. So presumably the grant could go towards those other expenses and, we can help, our money would help match the grant. And then also, they need to support the work that the person's doing, emotionally, consider it to be part of the mission of the organization and provide whatever kind of support that you would normally provide to someone on a supervisory level, assuming that that's the structure of the organization. Let's see, what else? All right, I think my final talking point for this section is the schedule and timeline. And it just occurred to me that I don't know the deadline off the top of my head. Someone else is going to jump in and share that. But the application for the fellowship is on our website. I'll put the link in the chat, but presumably you've seen it if you made your way to the info session. The application is not incredibly onerous, but it does involve writing some essays and thinking through how you think that your proposal would fill a gap in services. It also involves the host organization submitting a letter of support and some material showing that they are a 501c3. So it does take a little time. So make sure you sort of plan that time in. Okay, the deadline is May 15th. Thank you, Ty.
I was going to wait to chime in, but Ty put it in the chat.
Thanks. So there's still plenty of time to pull everything together. However, if you find that you're having trouble meeting that May 15th deadline, it is somewhat flexible. So reach out to me. Tell me that you're working on something. Tell me when the date you think you can get it to me by is, and we can have a discussion. So it's not a hard and firm deadline, but it is the target deadline. And we will start reviewing applications after May 15th. So you don't want to be too late or you might miss the boat. Our other deadlines are all very firm. This is the only one that's flexible. So that is the timeline. We'll review applications and do interviews sometime throughout May, depending on when exactly they all come in, and would like to make offers ideally in June. Generally, the start date for our other fellows is in early September, right after Labor Day, but we are flexible with this one on the start date as well. So if someone wanted to start sooner or later, that's probably fine. Somewhere in the sort of July to October timeframe would be the ideal start time for us, so we can keep everyone sort of on a similar schedule and it's easier for payments and such. But again, if you really need to start a new job, you need money. We can certainly start you sooner. And if you need to finish up something or you have other plans or obligations that would extend past the early September, that's certainly doable. I think that's it for this section. I'll pass it off. And I gave some examples of the two fellows we have now, but I'm gonna not go into too much depth there because Leslie's going to talk more about her experience in a couple minutes. All right,
Okay.
Tony.
Yeah, so I'll pick it up from there and talk a little bit about putting the application together. So as Meg said, for the applicant, you definitely have to have identified a host organization already, know who you're going to be working with. And then really the application, I see it as mostly telling a story to the committee that's going to be deciding who to give the fellowship to about kind of who you are, what you would bring, and how you would be helping this organization and its mission and its clients if you're doing direct representation. And so the kinds of things that we ask you, because we have short essays that you have to write for the application, and the kinds of things that we're asking you to talk about is, your past work experience. What kind of work experience do you have that's prepared you for the fellowship? And, think of that as kind of very broadly writ. It's not necessarily all paid experience. It could be pro bono experience that you have before this helping you to prepare for this. What are the ways that, we should be comfortable that you're ready for this, especially bearing in mind, kind of how Meg described the fellowship, which is that this one, we're not viewing the person as somebody who's going to need a lot of hand holding or a lot of mentoring. It's somebody who's going to basically be mostly self-sufficient because they have a decent amount of experience doing tax work before they're going to be starting the fellowship. And then kind of probably the most important part is like, how would you help to serve the mission of the organization? What, as Meg said, what gaps are you going to be filling? What things are you going to be doing for the organization? How are you going to be kind of expanding their reach, or how are you going to be kind of filling a need just kind of in the general tax landscape in the United States, or, with respect to specific underserved communities, even if you're in an area that's otherwise, well served. So we want to, hear about all of those things. Of course, other things that we're always worried about too is kind of the long-term sustainability of the organization. So, is your role fitting into, in some places we've seen it fits into succession planning, that they want to bring in the fellow because, they have somebody who's on the verge of retirement. And this is a nice bridge because then, everything works out the way that we all hope it'll work out. The fellowship is successful, the fellow is successful, the person who's on the verge of retirement retires, and then the fellow basically is now funded with the money that they were using to pay for the person who's retiring. So, all of those things are things that we're looking to kind of hear about and learn about. Like, what would this money do? We want to know kind of how would this be used in a way that would really be helpful for the organization, for the fellow, and for the community. We're also interested in hearing about your past, public service experience, any pro bono work you've done, any work you've done kind of helping the kinds of, clients, if you're dealing with clients directly, that this organization would be serving. And we also want to know kind of how this fits into your kind of trajectory. How does this fit into where you want to be, several years from now? Is this, for some people, this might be, kind of a bridge to full retirement, depending on, and this is going to depend on the circumstances of the organization too. For some people, we envision this could be, I'm leaving the IRS at the end of my career, but I'm not ready to like just go into retirement completely yet. I'd like to do some public service oriented work for a while, and this is a nice bridge into being able to do that. And eventually I'll retire someday, fully, but not quite yet. For other people, it could be, I've been working in, kind of the for-profit sector, and I want to make the move into public service. And this is, kind of my bridge into making that kind of a move. And so, we want to know about that too. This year in particular, we're thinking that this could also be a help and a bridge for people who, have been working in the IRS and have been, kind of furloughed or, let go because of everything that's going on with the downsizing of the government, that this could be a good bridge, especially for people who had been in LITCs before and then left to go into the IRS in the past couple of years. And now this would be a bridge for them to get back into that world again, if that's, what they're looking to do. And so telling us the story about that, it really helps to kind of humanize things and helps us to, figure out, okay, who's telling a compelling story? Who do we want to kind of continue this process with? Who do we actually want to hear from? Because as Meg said, we do interviews, and we do interviews kind of on both sides. So we always, look through the applications, identify who we think are, kind of telling compelling stories, who the finalists are, and we schedule interviews with them. So we will interview the finalists, but then we also interview the host organization as well. And that's because we want to make sure that, the host organization is going to be a good place for people to land. Sometimes we get some extra information from them about how this fits into their mission and stuff that can be really helpful to us in, kind of evaluating the finalists. But it's also a way for us to, kind of expectation set in terms of, okay, this is where we're thinking and hoping our money will go, and what kinds of things we'll do, and what you will be bringing to the table. And so it's good to set those expectations, I think, early on. That's most compelling with our Brunswick fellowships, where we're really expecting them to mentor a lot, but we still want to see what kind of a relationship is our fellow going to have with everybody else working at this organization. Are they going to have also some support systems there as well to make sure that they're successful? Because that's the overall goal here for us is, we're hoping to get the money to people who will be successful with the fellowship and to organizations that will then flourish because they're getting the help that our fellows are able to provide. Um, in terms of Meg, did you want to handle the how to look for a host if you haven't done so, or you want me to start and then? Okay, so for potential applicants, probably the biggest lift is usually okay, I need to find a place that's willing to host me before I can fill out an application here and make an application for the fellowship. There's a variety of different ways that you can look for a host organization. I mean, if you are looking to stay in the same area where you live now, you can look for LITCs in the area to see if any of them have needs and might be willing to host. Another great resource is our ABA tax section pro bono and tax clinics listserv. That listserv is open to anyone, not just ABA tax section members. And you can join that listserv, and you can put something on the listserv saying, hey, I'm interested in applying for the Tax Analyst Fellowship. And if you have specific things in mind, like a specific geographic area or anything like that, you can let people know and see what responses you get. You can also reach out to Meg. Meg's often a great resource. And, part of the reason we do kind of the round the room thing before we turn on the recording is that lets us know who's in the room that's looking and what are they looking for. And for those of you who weren't in the room and are watching this on the recording, you can always reach out to Meg. If you're a host organization, say, hey, we're looking for a fellow in this area because of these reasons. Can you help us to match up if you're getting fellows who might be a good match for us? And so we can help sometimes do that kind of matching of fellows with potential potential host organizations based on kind of what we've been hearing from folks who are interested in hosting a fellow and from folks who are interested in being a fellow. So that's something we can do. And Meg, I'll let you pick up from there a little bit and talk maybe a little bit more about that and then continue on to some of the other topics.
Honestly, you covered it really, really well, Tony. I mean, I think with this one more so than with our other one, people do tend to come with an idea of sort of why they sort of they already have the notion of something they might want to do and are trying to see if it'd be a good fit for this source of funding. So I'm happy to talk through whether that is the case or not, because I think those are the conversations I tend to have more on this fellowship. Am I a good fit? Is this project a good fit? Is this organization a good fit? But then also I have certainly had conversations with people and especially for this target sort of experience level who say, my family's here, that I'm rooted in this particular geographic region. I don't know where I could do this work, but I really want to do it. And we've done some really heavy searching and asking around for local organizations that might be willing to start an LITC or host a tax professional in some way. So I am certainly more than happy to do that. It's good work, and even if it doesn't work out, it's good work in general for exposure for LITCs in areas that don't have them, or just to let more people know about the program. So I think that the program office for the LITC grant appreciates it, the scouting work. So please do reach out, and we can use all of our networks to try to make something work. So It is a pretty individualized thing, so I'm happy to work with you. I mean, the easiest thing, of course, is, Leslie had a prior relationship with her organization, and RG was already doing pro bono work for the LATC that he works for now. So obviously that's the easiest set of facts, but there's plenty that we can work with. Let's see who's next.
It's Ty next, I think.
Yes, let's turn it over to Ty to talk briefly. I think most people here are more on the applicant side, but it's helpful to know a little bit about how the finances work so that if you approach someone, you can say, if you were to host me, here's how it would work. And so Ty is going to talk about that a little bit.
Great, thanks. So host organization and fellow have come together. They have submitted the application and then they are successful. So what happens next? So the fellowship is funded directly by tax analysts. However, it flows through what's called the Fund for Justice in Education. And so the Fund for Justice in Education is what sends the host organization quarterly contributions. And so the host organization is responsible to pay all the expenses, including payroll, taxes, benefits for the fellow. However, what the contribution to the host organization includes is salary. The current salary, unless Meg tells me it's been updated, but it should be $80,000 a year. The contribution also includes FICA, and the contribution also includes health benefits, which includes medical, dental, disability, those types of things. The benefits are set by the host organization and then reviewed by us, and then generally is a-okay to reimburse. You might say reimburse, but pay all of those expenses for the fellow. In addition, the fellowship will pay the expenses for the fellow to attend our 2 in-person section meetings. Right now, those are generally in January or February, our mid-year meeting, and our spring meeting, which is generally every May. We pay for airfare, hotel, transfers, meals, etc. So that is generally paid directly by us. The host organization doesn't generally need to pay those expenses, though it's okay if they do and we reimburse them. That's okay as well. So those are the expenses the contribution supports. Those numbers can change over the time. So if your benefits are X in 2025, they can be X plus something in 2026, because we all know things go up and we adjust those amounts. And like I say, the contributions are done quarterly. They can be faster or slower depending on if the association or the host organization tells me, circumstances are such that we need a payment plan in a different fashion. So it is somewhat flexible, but that's, I think, everything in terms of the specific logistics. Unless there are any questions, happy to answer. Everybody wants to know how the money works.
The only thing I would add is, because we hadn't mentioned it before, but the tax section, in addition to kind of administering the fellowship. I mean, tax analyst pays for, the salary, pays for the fringe benefits. We administer the fellowship for them. But in addition, as Ty said, the tax section's other part of it is, we want the fellows to be involved in the tax section. We have to come to the meetings, but we pay for you to come to the meetings. We, waive your registration fees, even for the virtual one. There's a virtual meeting in the fall. At least for now, in the fall, that's, you don't have to pay for and you can attend that. And, we want the fellows to be involved with, being on panels, trying to get their work, the kinds of things they're doing out in front of tax lawyers from around the country. And then tax analysts also, would like the fellows to, publish something with them so you can get some, base time in that way, that you're getting out in front of the world with, the issues that you're interested in is another aspect of the fellowship. But then I think next we're supposed to pass it over to Leslie, correct? Okay, so I'll pass it to Leslie.
Okay, thanks. Thank you all. Let me clarify first that I'm the 2023-2025 tax analyst fellow. I think it was wishful thinking that I said I was 2024-2026, because I'm realizing this will come to an end in 6 months, and That makes me sort of sad. I will give you just a little recap of what I've done as the LITC director and as the fellow in the last 5 to 6 weeks. So I went to the ABA meeting, a mid-year meeting in February, I think, in LA. And then from there, I went to Alaska and took part in the ABDC VITA program in a very remote village in Alaska with someone I had met through LITC, Susan, over 20 years ago. So that was just a great experience. And I learned so much about how we can maybe do VITA, not through LITC, of course, but back on the Navajo, Hopi, and Supai reservation. I took part in a alternative spring break law student program from American University. The law students came and we had them out in Window Rock, Arizona on the Navajo reservation and gave them an overview of the LITC program. Now, of course, they all want to be tax lawyers. Probably not. And that was great. And then I just Sunday helicoptered out of Supai Village at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, where I was partnering with United Way of Tucson and Red Rock Tax Assistance, who goes down there in February and March to do free tax preparation. And now we came out with 3 new LITC clients after that. And now we have a relationship with the tribal council down there. So I'm exhausted, but this is just exactly what I wanted to happen. I came out of private practice about 2.5 years ago and didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I had worked with DNA People's Legal Services. They provide free legal services to the Navajo, Hopi tribal communities, the Supai community. And they had not had their LITC program. I did a little research. I found out that they had given up their LITC grant in 2017, I think. And so I got speaking to some folks I used to know in the program and went knocking on my sponsoring organization's door and convinced them that this would be good for them to have this program again. And then the fellowship, came up during that, and I applied for it. The tax analysts folks in the ABA have been so supportive. We now have a Christine Brunswick fellow working with me in the program, and I just heard her tell someone, someone asked her, one of the American University students said, well, what are you going to do when your fellowship's over? And she said, well, I really couldn't think of leaving this. So that just that just made me so happy because, of course, that's what I want to see happen is for someone like Chelsea, our Brunswick fellow, to take the program over. We have we are bringing on we have a staff attorney who's transferring into our LITC program to work with us, hopefully full time beginning this year. So I think, our organization was skeptical. It's really important that you have a strong organization and you have the support of your organization. And they agreed to do it. And now I feel like we are sort of, we're sort of the favorite child at DNA People's Legal Services. So that we have lots of clients. We're doing outreach in different communities. Similar to what I just talked about. So I would encourage anyone who, even thinks like, this was I didn't think that I would be doing this at all. And then this fellowship really made it possible. And it's allowed us to bring the program back to an underserved community. And yeah, we have lots of clients, and that's a good thing. That's what we wanted to do. And we're doing lots of outreach and partnering with people to bring VITA services back to the reservation because there is a real lack of those services here. And if anyone who's thinking of applying or, has any questions, feel free to get my information from Meg, and she will put you in touch with me. I'm happy to answer questions. And again, just so grateful for everything ABA and Tax Analysts has done for me and DNA Legal Services.
Thanks, Leslie. I think that's a really, your example is, just so perfect for what we wanted to do with this program, which was reaching a specific population that needed these services, breathing life back into an LITC that had sort of, fallen off over the years, and engaging someone who really has the career maturity and, obviously from her description of the last few weeks, energy, to jump into this project, feet first, head first, whatever the expression is, and that she is now supervising someone else doing that work. This is certainly what the purpose of this fellowship is. So we love your example, Leslie, and RG as well. Both of our current fellows are just perfect examples. So we feel very fortunate with how the program is going so far, and look forward to adding another. Was there anything else we missed here, Tony or Ty or Michelle?
No, I think we're ready for questions.
Yeah.
Did anyone have
One thing we didn't mention earlier is that, if for those of you that maybe are familiar, or if you've read about the Brunswick program, we do, because those folks are, you know, not dealing with sort of establishing an LATC, or dealing with bringing in new clientele and reaching out to new areas. We do ask them to do a project, and so they do all sorts of interesting projects with specific populations. This fellowship does not require that. Your essays could describe simply, I'm hoping that this LATC can perform its basic functions and continue to exist into the future, and here's how I envision myself being key to that, happening in this support, and your financial support would enable that to be possible. But it could also involve, Leslie obviously is doing all sorts of things that I would consider to be, projects that relate to her work, of course, but that aren't necessarily, required. The fact that she got the LITC back up and running and is serving lots of clients is what we were looking for. So that was all she needed to do. She's like an A+ student doing extra credit work over here. But RG is taking an existing LATC that did already exist and did have a staff person, and he is expanding the services into parts of Arkansas that don't have a physical presence right now. And so he's able to literally be there with people that maybe need that physical that in-person interaction, and make sure that parts of the state that are not being served have a tax lawyer that's sort of coming to them and providing that service. So slightly different model, but achieves the same goal. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Dan again. How many of the grants does Tax Analyst provide, like,
Yeah,
theoretically?
we should have led with that. That's a really, really good question. So right now the funding covers one fellow per class, and so it's a 2-year fellowship, so you always have overlap. So Leslie started a little bit later. She'll overlap. At one point we will have 3 fellows for a bit in the fall, hopefully. That is the goal, but each of them will be at staggered terms. So right now we're looking to select 1 fellow. That's the amount of funding that we have right now. Thank you for asking. And then if you're looking in an area where there are other strong LATC services, that's not a definite no, in any case, by any means. I think you'd want to just carefully structure your application to explain why, but for this funding, this X population would not be served, or while there are, and acknowledging that there are other LATCs in the state of Georgia or New Jersey or what have you. This particular population is in need of tax services, and this, the fellowship would reach this group of people that is currently underserved or unserved by the current LATC. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I think that we've covered what we need to cover, and there might be individualized questions, because I think this is a pretty specific type of fellowship. So feel free to reach out to me My email is all around and it's on the application and such, but I'll share. It's my first name dot my last name at americanbar.org. I'll put it in the chat as well. So megan.newman@americanbar.org. It's also on the website and on the application, so it's not hard to find. But feel free to contact me at any time and I can put you in touch with our current fellows or Ty or Tony or whoever you'd like. All right. Thank you everyone very much for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.